This missile system can destroy an aircraft before the pilot knows they are being targeted. It can shoot down stealth aircraft, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, simultaneously, at ranges up to 400 kilometers. America calls it the most dangerous air defense system on Earth. It threatens every NATO aircraft in service. India bought 5 batteries of it from Russia and almost lost access to American weapons technology because of that decision. This is the story of the S-400, the weapon that is simultaneously Russia's most powerful export and the world's most geopolitically complicated purchase. The S-400 Triumf, NATO designation SA-21 Growler, is Russia's most advanced surface-to-air missile system. It entered service with the Russian military in 2007. Range, up to 400 kilometers against large targets. Altitude, up to 30 kilometers. Simultaneous targets, up to 80 tracked and 6 engaged simultaneously. Reaction time, 9.8 seconds from detection to launch. Deployment time, 5 minutes from road travel to operational. The S-400 uses 4 different missiles to cover different threat profiles. The 40N6 missile has a range of 400 kilometers, meaning a battery deployed near Moscow can engage aircraft over Poland. The 9M96E2 is a highly maneuverable medium-range interceptor designed specifically to destroy stealth aircraft that attempt close-in attacks. What makes the S-400 genuinely dangerous to Western air forces is its AESA radar system, the 92N6 Gravestone Engagement Radar. It can track very small radar cross-section targets, including stealth aircraft, at ranges where the aircraft's own sensors cannot yet detect the radar. The F-35, which has a radar cross-section of approximately 0.001 square meters, is detectable by the S-400 at ranges that deny the F-35 the standoff distance it needs for safe operation. That is why the S-400 in Chinese and Russian hands fundamentally changes the risk calculation for NATO air operations. India signed the deal to purchase 5 S-400 batteries from Russia in October 2018. The contract value was approximately $5.43 billion. The United States was furious under a law called CAATSA, Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. Any country that makes a significant defense transaction with Russia faces automatic U.S. sanctions. The U.S. threatened India with sanctions that would cut off Indian access to American defense technology, spare parts, and future procurement. India's response was essentially, "We understand your concerns. We are buying it anyway." Why? 3 reasons. First, Pakistan and China. India shares borders with 2 nuclear-armed adversaries who both operate advanced air forces. Pakistan flies F-16S and JF-17S. China operates J-20 stealth fighters and H-6 bombers capable of carrying nuclear cruise missiles. India needed an air defense system capable of dealing with both simultaneously. No American system was available in the timeline India needed at the price India could afford with the technology transfer terms India demanded. The Patriot was on the table, but at a higher cost, with less technology transfer and without the multi-threat simultaneous engagement capability that the S-400 provides. Second, strategic autonomy. India's defense doctrine is built on strategic autonomy, the principle that India does not subordinate its security decisions to any foreign power's preferences, including the United States. Buying the S-400 despite American pressure was as much a statement of that doctrine as it was a military procurement decision. Third, Russia. India and Russia have a 50-year history of defense cooperation. Walking away from Russia entirely for a system that India genuinely needed would have damaged a strategic relationship that India considers essential. The US ultimately waived the CAATSA sanctions on India, a significant concession acknowledging India's strategic importance as a counterweight to China. But the waiver was not guaranteed. India bought the S-400 without knowing whether the waiver would come. That is not the decision of a country afraid of American pressure. It is the decision of a country confident in its own strategic weight. India is not the only country that bought the S-400 and caused a diplomatic crisis. Turkey, a NATO member, purchased the S-400 in 2019. The US responded by removing Turkey from the F-35 program. Turkey had ordered 100 F-35s. All of them were cancelled. Turkey is now flying F-16 and is developing its own domestic fighter, the Kaan, because it cannot access the F-35. China purchased the S-400 in 2015. The US response included targeted sanctions on Chinese military entities involved in the purchase. China's possession of the S-400 has allowed Chinese engineers to study its radar and guidance systems, which directly informs China's own air defense development. The S-400's geopolitical impact therefore runs in both directions. It threatens Western aircraft, and it spreads Russian radar and missile technology to adversaries of the United States in ways that outlast the political relationship between the buyer and Russia. For India, the geopolitical complication intensified after Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. India's S-400 batteries are Russian-supplied, Russian-maintained, and dependent on Russian spare parts and software updates. India now operates a system that requires it to maintain a functional defense relationship with Russia at exactly the moment when the rest of the democratic world is severing that relationship. India's 5 S-400 batteries are being deployed to guard 3 critical sectors: the Pakistani border, the Chinese border in Ladakh, and a central reserve location. The entire Indian air defense architecture is being restructured around them. Russia has refused to sell the S-400 to Iran despite years of negotiations. The system is Russia's most powerful conventional export, and it controls supply very carefully. Fewer than 10 countries have received it. The S-500, the S-400's successor, is already entering Russian service. It can engage targets in low Earth orbit, including satellites. Russia is building a weapons system that can shoot down satellites. India is now developing its own long-range surface-to-air missile system, Project Kusha, partly to reduce dependence on the S-400 over time. The weapon India bought to solve its air defense problem is already inspiring the weapon India will build to replace it. $5.43 billion, 5 batteries, a diplomatic crisis with America, a strategic statement to the world. India looked at its security environment, it looked at what was available, and it made the decision that no outside pressure, not American sanctions, not NATO concerns, not the risk of losing F-35 access, would determine India's defense choices. That is what strategic autonomy looks like when it is tested. That is Series 1 of Unbox Defense. 5 videos, 5 stories about the weapons, companies, and decisions that shape the world's security. Subscribe, Series 2 is coming.